in parentheses. Was that in Jesus' sermon? No, Jesus didn't pause in the middle of the sermon and say, oh, by the way, would you note this? Put in parentheses now, let the reader understand. No, this was given to Matthew and Mark by inspiration of the Holy Spirit. As they were writing it down a little while later, the Holy Spirit inspired them to say, tell the reader, understand this. Pay special attention. When you see this happening, here's what you ought to do. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to get the things that are out that are in his house. Let him who is in the field not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are with child and to those who nurse babes in those days, nursing moms. Pray that your flight may not be in winter when it's cold and difficult to travel, or on the Sabbath. Today the Israeli airline shuts down on the Sabbath. For then, here's when it will happen, there will be, what? Great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall. And unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect, the chosen of God, that's what that word means, those days shall be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, behold, here's the Christ, or there he is, don't believe him. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show great signs and wonders, so as to mislead, if possible, even the elect, the chosen ones, for which this is cut short, as you see in verse 22. Behold, I have told you in advance. If therefore they say to you, behold, he's in the wilderness, that is Jesus, don't go forth. It seems to give you the idea that people would be in hiding. And they're trying to be wooed out by false reports of the Christ. 26, or behold, he is in the inner rooms, could speak of the temple. Do not believe them. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes even to the west, so shall the coming, the second coming, of the Son of Man be. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. A Jewish idiom simply means when there's a corpse on the ground, what do you see up above? Vultures. It'll be as plain as the nose on your face. This is what he's saying. When you see vultures above, you know something's dead on the ground. And Jesus says, my coming will be plain. It will be like a lightning flash from the east to the west. People won't have to say, oh, he showed up on a mountaintop somewhere, or he's over in... None of that. It will be plain. It will be clear. Now, for whose benefit is he saying this? I would imagine those who will be in the rooms hiding, or get false reports, or see signs and wonders. And Jesus is saying, look, when you see these things, when you see the armies, when you see the Antichrist desolating, bringing abomination. Abomination is often used of idols, that which is detestable to God. In history, before Jesus was born, in 186 BC, there was a man named Antiochus Epiphanes. He was kind of Grecian descent. And what he did was he went into the temple in Jerusalem. He brought a statue of Zeus into the holy place. Some say it had his face on it. And he defiled the temple. And he also slaughtered a pig and spilled pig's blood inside of it. This is historical. It's going to be something similar to that. There's going to have to be a temple. He's going to go in there. And he's going to make some sort of proclamation that he's God. Now, with that thought in mind, go to Daniel 11. Daniel 11. I told the first service I'm not going to make this a 4-part sermon, so we're going to get this done today. But I want to show you something really intriguing about Antichrist. This is Daniel 11. Let's start in verse 39. Speaking of the Antichrist, Daniel 11:39, he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and he will cause them to rule over many, and will parcel out land for a price. Daniel 11:40. And at the end of time, or just before the return of Christ, the king of the south will collide with him, and the king of the north will storm against him. Now, I have notes from several years ago, and you know who in my notes I say those are? The king of the south in my notes is Egypt, and the king of the north is Syria. Heard anything about those nations recently? skip down to 41. He will also enter the beautiful land, that's the land of Israel, and many countries will fall. But these will be rescued out of his hand. Edom, probably modern-day Jordan there, Moab, and the foremost sons of Ammon. Then he will stretch out his hand against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape. But he will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver. Some take that literally, others think it could speak of oil. And over all the precious things of Egypt, and Libyans down into Africa, and the Ethiopians will follow at his heels. But rumors from the east and from the north will disturb him. He will go forth with great wrath to destroy and annihilate many. And he, that's the Antichrist, will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas of the Mediterranean and Dead Seas, and the beautiful holy mountain, that's Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Now look at Daniel 12, 1 and 2. Now at that time, Michael, the great prince, here's the archangel, who stands guard over the sons of your people, that's Israel, will arise. The Hebrew word amad means to stand still or cease or step out of the middle. And there will be a time of distress such as has never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And at that time your people, everyone who is found written in the book, that's the book of life, will be rescued. And many of those who sleep in the dust, sleep is a metaphor for death, kind of like you put your dog to sleep, that's the idea. Many who sleep in the dust of the ground will awake, these to everlasting life, those who are written in the book, but others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. And those who have insight will shine brightly like the brightness of the expanse of heaven, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Back to Luke 21. And so, as we see the end days, Jesus gives us a marker. He's given us several, as you've noted, but now he's going to give us what's called a cosmic sign. I mentioned to you last Sunday that on the NASA website in 2014 and 2015, they've noted that there's going to be some extremely rare phenomena. And I was sitting down having a meal with a friend, and he drew this out for me. We're going to have on Passover a blood moon in 2014. That means lunar eclipse. We're going to have one in 2015. And then on the Feast of Tabernacles, we're going to have a blood moon on Tabernacles in 2014 and 2015. Back-to-back years. I think it's called a tetrad. And I said last week, I don't know what it means, but I'll tell you when it's happened before. It happened in 1948 and 49, after Israel became a nation. This happened, there was the blood moons, and it happened in 1968 and 69, according to my recollection, after Israel recaptured Jerusalem. It's happened in association with major markers in the life of the nation of Israel. Their rebirth or regathering to the land, just the 2 years following this happened, and then their recapturing of Jerusalem after the 6-Day War. I'm just saying, just note it. 2014 and 15, it's going to happen again. God's saying something. What it is, I can't say for sure. But it is something that we ought to pay attention to. Genesis 1:14 tells us that the stars, sun, moon, and stars are for signs and seasons. The language goes much beyond just spring, winter, summer, and fall. It points to signs where God is communicating something to us. And so that's why I would just have you note that and pay attention to it. So Jesus is given these words. He gives the same warning found in Matthew 24 and Luke 21:21. He says, "Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of the city depart. Let not those who are in the country enter the city. Because these are," Luke 21:22, "days of vengeance, in order that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Woe to those who are with child and to those who nurse babes in those days. For there will be great distress upon the land and wrath to this people." And I believe, again, we are seeing Satan's wrath being talked about. "And they will fall by the edge of the sword," 24. and will be led captive into all the nations. I think you have a near-far fulfillment here. Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. If you're a note taker, write down Romans 11, 25 through 27. A little further explanation on those particular events. And there will be signs in the sun and moon and stars. Now we're moving up to the sixth seal. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and upon the earth dismay among nations, in perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of the things which are coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. If you go to Matthew 24, and I'm going to move quickly because we're pretty much out of time. Matthew 24, same sermon, notice what Jesus says. He says that the tribulation, great tribulation, is cut short for the sake of the elect. And he says these words, Matthew 24, 29. But immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall